Every day between now and November, the American people are going to know that the only reason the border is not secure is Donald Trump.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please.
Just a catching strays over here.
You're in for a hell of a show.
Keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs.
It's time for our main event.
Welcome back to the Ruthless Variety program. I certainly hope you're looking forward to football this weekend, because if you're super into politics, might not be the best week.
Yeah.
Maybe not be the best week
Yeah.
that we've showcased.
That opener was just such insanity, and I knew this is a play that he was going to try to take. Is first off, I think Donald Trump isn't the current president. I think that's Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Right?
Is that right? I think let's check the record on that, but I think that's right.
And number two, more importantly and more interestingly, is him saying that Donald Trump, because Donald Trump didn't want to do anything about the chaos at the border. I thought there wasn't any chaos at the border. I thought things were going fine. For 3 years, Joe Biden and Mayorkas have been telling us, everything's fine at the border.
Don't forget the borders are. Don't forget the borders are.
Kamala Harris, they've been saying, there's no emergency at the border. Oh, well, I guess Donald Trump is why there is.
It's just such a laughable, completely absurd thing that's going. All of this. I mean, I think what offends all of us is the entire discussion is just not real.
Right.
Yeah.
There's nothing that's happened here that's real. There's very few people that are actually speaking the truth about what's going on. That foremost amongst them.
Yeah.
Joe Biden, just the temerity.
Yeah.
The temerity to stand on a stage and say, come to America, we'll let you in, give you free health care, give you free benefits and everything else, and then do it, and then turn around 3 years later and be like, what happened?
As Bill Malugin pointed out when Joe Biden was running for president, he said there should be a surge of refugees at the border.
Yeah, well, he got it.
There you go.
He got it. Now, those are the facts. Also, not the greatest legislative day in the history of American politics this week.
Yeah.
Lot of really disappointing stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lot of really disappointing stuff. The chaos on the Hill, clearly. And, we'll flex us to get right into the meat.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, we like to warm you up a little bit with some fun stories. I'm Josh Holmes, by the way, with Comfortably Smug, Michael Duncan, and John Ashbrook, just in case you're tuning in for the first time. Which, by the way, our last episode, I don't know if we intended it to be, almost record highs.
Oh.
People very excited about listening to the Variety program.
Wow, made some news.
Well, it turns out we say controversial things here on the Variety program.
It's the kind of show where we're not just going to give you the talking points. The nice thing about conservatives is that they're not afraid of differing points of view because conservatives know they're right.
Real conservatives.
They know they're right.
Real conservatives.
And that we have an actual discussion on this show.
Yeah.
We do.
I loved it.
Yeah. No, I think it's right. And if your itty-bitty little sensitive ears are too afraid to listen to things you might disagree with, go fuck yourself and go find something else to do with your lives. Okay? So, with all that being said, there was mayhem on Capitol Hill this week.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of stuff involving a supplemental bill that dealt with the immigration stuff, which we talked about last episode. The big, I think, crux of the excitement was over this Mayorkas impeachment, which, and I'll let you guys weigh in on this, but I think it's all of our opinion. This dude deserved to be impeached.
Yes.
Right?
I mean, it's pretty clear he wasn't doing his job, and beyond that, actively undermining what his job should be.
Absolutely. I mean, look, this is a guy that stood before the House of Representatives and said there was no border crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And then actively disputed facts as they were presented to him in committee testimony, refused various clarifications, and didn't ultimately do his job. Now, whether he's acting at the behest of Joe Biden or not, so be it. But this guy is fat, is in the fire, and I think House Republicans rightly decided that, well, if you're going to lie to us and not do your job, you're going to get You're going to get a consequence for that. And for the first time in 30 years or something like that, they brought articles of impeachment against this guy. And the vote went down last night as I was on Brett Baer's show on Fox and was watching it live, and it was a tie. There was one member who had to change their vote in order to have a procedural thing that allows them to bring this back up when Steve Scalise, who you recall is stricken with cancer and undergoing treatments, when he returns to the chamber, theoretically, they'll have a majority to actually impeach the guy, which they did not have because of the absence at that point. What's your take, fellas? What do you think about all of that?
Well, I think part of the reason why we're in this situation is we had a slim majority to begin with, and it keeps getting whittled.
Yeah.
You know,
because the brilliant decision to oust Kevin McCarthy for one, which was takes one seat out.
You know, me personally, I disagreed with the idea of pushing Santos out. Let the voters decide. Is how I felt about that. It'd been, and like he even had this tweet where he was like, "Miss me yet." And
I mean, you might be George Santos, though. I mean, like,
yeah.
And
I'm not totally convinced I've seen you in the same room at the same time.
There's a consequence. There's a consequence.
There's a consequence of at that moment not having that vote. And then, to his credit, Gates had a fantastic response to the Santos tweet when Santos was like, "Miss me yet?" And Gates was like, "We could have used you, whoever you are."
That's pretty funny.
And in that case, it would have really helped.
Whoever you are.
It would have. But, I mean, look, the simple reality is that it was a very narrow majority to begin with at the beginning of the Congress, and they've whittled it away, some by self-immolation with the McCarthy case. I think there's a very strong argument you just made with the Santos thing. Like, is he a vote for impeachment? No question about it.
And also, specifically for Representative Gallagher, who typically I agree with him on a ton of things. Most things, probably. Definitely most things. But he gave the reasoning that he didn't want impeachment to become like a political weapon.
Right.
Which, I mean, I love the sentiment, but that train's left the station. Impeachment has absolutely become a political weapon that the Democrats have used extensively with impunity. So I think that train's left the station. And number two, as we've just said, if anyone is deserving of impeachment, it's someone who's in charge of protecting the border. And not only did they not protect the border, they did the opposite. They opened the border and then lied to the American people about it. To me, that seems like they got to go.
It was entirely warranted, just like you said, Smug.
On Main Street, local credit unions and community banks are the heart of our small towns. So when these institutions are united in opposition to the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill, Congress should listen. The Durbin-Marshall credit card bill favors corporate megastores like Walmart and Target, shifting costs and risks unfairly onto the credit unions, community banks, and the 135 million customers they serve. Tell Congress to protect America's credit unions and community banks and oppose the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. Visit electronicpaymentscoalition.org to take action.
I want to highlight one thing because I think it sort of distills down the sort of tenor of Capitol Hill and the discourse writ large in our politics right now. So at the last minute, GOP Vice Chairman, Congressman Blake Moore, switched his vote so that the House procedurally could bring it up again.
I can't tell you. They have the same thing in the Senate.
Yeah.
And working under the dome, it's a member of leadership that needs to do this.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how many times when your guy has to do that in order to bring the thing back up, like all hell breaks loose.
Right. Yeah. Right.
And then you have to spend the next 3 days trying to explain.
So, that's what this brings me to. So, I don't know the guy. I've never met him. He seems like a really nice guy.
Yeah.
He does this direct-to-camera video on his Twitter, X page, whatever, explaining the procedural thing. Like, look, I had to flip my vote so we can bring this back up when Scalise is back and we can get this impeachment done, yada, yada, yada. Comments. Not much trust here. Sorry, Blake, but unfortunately, until this passes, you're lumped in with the rhinos. I mean, for some reason, Americans don't trust politicians. Until he's actually impeached, I see you as a rhino traitor.
So well, let me explain the rule for people, and this is like arcane parliamentary stuff, but they have it both the House and the Senate. If a bill that the majority is pushing, a bill, or in this case, a executive calendar thing like a judge or an impeachment, a member of the majority leadership needs to vote no.
Yeah.
In order for that person to rebring it. Otherwise, it has to be refiled, go through the full process, and get back to the floor. If a member of the leadership votes no, it means that person can immediately call it right back up.
Right.
So anytime this happens on a conservative thing, you need somebody to go out and do it. And the funny thing is, I wonder how this guy drew the short straw.
That's the thing is, do they literally draw straws? So they go in the cloakroom and like, oh shit, dude.
I mean, I remember
getting wrecked on Twitter on that.
You're going to get it on Twitter. And they're all laughing.
Because you can't explain it, right? You're like, no, this is a procedural thing. They're like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
But that's literally what just happened to this poor bastard, where he now had to vote no in order to be the person that can ensure that Mayorkas is actually impeached.
Yeah.
If and when Scalise comes back.
Right. It's actually the opposite.
It's the opposite.
He's saving it.
Yeah, he's the one. He's the guy.
He's the hero
who's doing it, and yet no.
So
Yeah.
if I'm in that situation, I have my staff very quickly get a T-shirt made that says "Voting No," so we can bring this up to impeach. Yeah. And then I wear it and I go to the front and I'm like, "Hey, everybody, I want to bring this up back. It might not work. The rule is someone in leadership's got to vote no. Look at my shirt, please believe me."
And your menchies would be like, "You cut."
Destroyed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the good news is the guy is going to be impeached.
It seems like that.
God, I hope, man.
The good news is if you look at the vote and the way the total came down, and you know that Scalise is coming back at some point, he's going to be impeached, and he deserves to be impeached. And at some point, even though we've had a news cycle of uncomfortable stories for House Republicans, they will show why a House majority matters.
And
I sure hope you're right.
My thinking is, so from my understanding, apparently they did have the votes to do it based on who they thought was going to be there. And then the Democrats
Al Green,
rolled in Al Green
From the hospital.
From the hospital. And then they're like, oh gosh, time to draw straws.
We had way back in the day, we had an episode in the Senate. I think it was over at Doc Fix or something like that. It was an unoffset spending back when people cared about those sort of things. And Republicans were holding out for a better deal. They had the votes. And Ted Kennedy had the full glioblastoma situation. He was in
Chip.
He was in the.
S-chip.
Oh, it was S-chip. You're
Yeah.
right. And the votes were there, and lo and behold, a guy who was thought to never step foot in the Senate again, they wheeled in a wheelchair.
Yeah, I think it was a gurney.
I mean, it was. I remember it being an ugly situation.
I think he was laying down,
Jeez,
propped up.
Yeah. Well, they so like that happens, and well, I mean, look, John McCain did a similar thing with the tax cuts. People didn't think he was going to be. Democrats didn't count on him to be a deciding vote in favor of the Trump tax cuts in 2017. Surprised Democrats with that. So that happens from time to time. Everybody's making such a big deal out of like, well, Johnson he's new and he doesn't know how to count votes and he doesn't know how to do this, that, and the other. I mean, the reality is he's dealing with like a razor thin margin of error, and you got 435 people to deal with. And so if one of them trips and falls, sprains their ankle, like your count changes.
And you never expect to be in the scene from The Godfather where they like wheel in the guy into the courtroom and you're like, oh my God, this is actually happening now. They're wheeling in this dude.
They're wheeling in the guy.
Surprise.
They're wheeling the guy.
Al Green's
But
been
if
wheeled
you
in.
think your purple House district doesn't matter, this is evidence that it actually
there you go.
does. Turn your district around, elect a Republican, build that majority up, and these situations don't happen.
Yeah. So anyway, it was a disappointment, maybe a temporary setback. I do think that this guy is going to face his ultimate end here at some point, and it is well
Mayorkas.
deserved. Yeah, Mayorkas. I'm sorry, was not clear about that.
I was like, no, man, Johnson is just trying to do his best
Oh,
to
no,
reach
no.
it in March.
I thought that was in proper context, but it's not. I mean, look, I think Mayorkas has done everything you can do to ensure that you were impeached in an environment that Democrats made. They created impeachment as a political weapon, something that was rarely, if ever, used. And they decided to unbox it and use it and use it multiple times.
They will regret it maybe sooner than they thought.
Maybe sooner than they thought. It reminds me a lot of the judicial fights. But, I mean, they have that. They have that. On the other side, you got a Senate conference where we covered a lot of this last episode, where there was a discussion that was initiated by conservatives, primarily in the House, but also in the Senate, about how they wanted to extract some sort of border security in concert with any sort of security funding that the administration was going to request. And a lot of those members weren't going to approve security funding no matter what. But the thought process was, if you could get some leverage and force the Biden administration to do what they were ordinarily unwilling to do, it might be worth the exercise. Well, the politics changed, and so people were now all of a sudden not understanding why it was that they were going to do any sort of border security on it. I think Senator Langford, who was in charge of negotiating out a bipartisan package. And for those of people who are wondering, like, why is it that there was a bipartisan package? I mean, just remember, it's a Democratic Senate and a Democratic president.
Right.
Like, there's no actual way to make law here unless you find the middle. And making law is the only thing that matters. I mean, we got 3.5 million people coming across the border right now. I don't know what the number was per week. It's just horrifying coming across the border. And the only way to stop that is either have an administration that's committed to it or an administration that has to follow new law that they've endorsed. And I think what Republicans decided at some element was that a new administration, somebody who's willing to follow the law and shut down the border, ruled the day.
And that's the thing I thought was, to me, key to my personal thinking on this situation is, and I said as much on Twitter, where I see this situation at the border not as a policy issue, but as an enforcement issue. We already have law in the book that says you can't enter the country illegally. The issue here isn't let's come up with a new law. I feel like the issue here is follow the laws that you have on the book, and that is key to all of this, is the Biden administration will not follow the law they don't want to follow. So even if you pass any sort of effective new border control policy, they just won't follow it. I mean, the whole reason we're having to impeach Mayorkas is because they won't follow it. They don't care. They're indifferent to it. So I don't see, you can't, yes, we're in a situation where Democrats control the Senate and Democrats control the White House, and it's as a result of that they are lawless. So until that changes, until we have a new president, they just will not follow the laws no matter what is passed if they don't want to.
I think that's probably right. I mean, I guess the one place where I depart and why I was very frustrated at the immediate opposition rather than, I don't know, like amending the bill or trying to figure out how you're going to get it better or get to some sort of outcome where we actually pass a piece of legislation while 3 million people come over here.
Yeah.
Is it's not just people illegally crossing, it's people exploiting the asylum system. And you need something explicit in legislation in order to reform that asylum system. What operates currently is what's currently law. That we have to let them in, right? And if you don't reform that process and change that protocol, I mean, people are waiting 10 years for a hearing.
Just hanging out in our country.
10 years.
Yeah.
Right? And so I was hopeful we could get some of that done, but it just became theatrics immediately, people saying they had to read the legislation for 3 weeks, but then 24 hours later, they're in front of a press conference and they're tweeting out fundraising links. Yeah. And it's that's the sort of stuff that isn't team ball to me. And that's what frustrates me about the whole thing. Pass it or don't pass it. Ultimately, I don't care. It's an intractable issue. And yeah, Republicans will do better at it while they're in charge. But that was the thing that was sort of demoralizing for me about it, was like, we didn't even really try. We didn't try.
Well, I don't look, there are a few issues where there is clear distinction between Republicans and Democrats. This is one of them that has a bright line in between of them. And I didn't appreciate a whole bunch of innuendo and in some outright statements suggesting that Republicans don't want to close the border. There's not a single Republican. I don't care who they are. Not a single Republican that wants an open border. Not one. There are, I would say, a majority of Democrats that want an open border. And so when you begin blaming failure on yourselves rather than the Biden administration or anything else, it becomes a real problem. And like I said the other day, I mean, a bigger part of this is that it was a part of a package that deals with security funding. And there are a whole bunch of Republicans in this day and age who don't believe you ought to do that. You know, they're just a different brand of Republicans who just think that, like, you know, any sort of funding of security abroad is just not a priority. I can understand that in terms of, like, your average voter. I don't understand that from people who sit in intel briefings and understand what this money is going to do. And I know they know better, and that really irritates me.
But isn't that critical, I think, is especially if you're a representative of voters, is let people know what it's needed for. Because to me, the issue specifically with Ukraine is, what's the mission? We have never been told what the objective here is. And so the void that leaves is the objective here to return every square inch of Ukraine. Then tell voters that's what the objective is, and that this is what the money is. Be honest about it. If you're scared to tell people what it is, maybe it's something that they don't want to hear. That's probably a situation that they should hear it more than ever.
Yeah.
So what is the case? Like, I've seen news reports from, what was it, a couple months ago that said something like 90% of the Russian military has been completely destroyed. Okay, so if that's the situation, then do we need to give $60 billion more than the budget for the Marines to continue this operation? Because destroying 90% of the military of a country sounds like, you know, hey, looks like we got done what should be done
We need to be done. Well, I think part to your exact point, I think part of this is the result of a president that is entirely incapable of both setting coherent policy and explaining it to the American people.
Totally.
And quite literally. I mean, I don't mean that like he's inarticulate. I mean, like, I'm not sure that he could do it physically. Explain to the American people what
you're right.
I mean, think about the difference between even Barack Obama, who was a terrible, in my view, like prior to this guy, the absolute worst president, certainly in my lifetime, but I would go history with that. At least he had the capability of explaining to people what his intentions were.
Yeah, this is the only president in history where the bully pulpit is to his own detriment.
They can't use it.
Can't use it.
They can't use it.
Yeah.
It's that bad.
Right.
And
So-
again, like, I just for another kind of like comparison's sake, is whenever you had, we can go back to the previous presidency, whenever you had a military action taken, I remember seconds after Soleimani gets turned into salsa, we get a direct reasoning why. This guy was putting out IEDs to kill U.S. troops.
He killed more U.S.
That's why
troops
he
than
had to
any person in the world at that moment, and that was your top line talking.
And it's like, okay, so every voter in this country now knows this fact, and what do voters think of it? They're cool with it. So, like, the leadership of this country, why is Joe Biden not telling us what the hell our goal is in Ukraine? Because this war's been going on for, what, 2.5 years?
Yeah.
And we have zero clue what the objective is. Zero clue. And we've had billions already go, and now they want billions more. It's like, dude, like...
Explain to us why this makes sense.
If you went to a store, right, I want to buy a T-shirt, and they're like, give us your credit card number. Okay. Well, what's the total? We'll let you know.
Yeah, right.
What am I getting for this? Well, the T-shirt and maybe some other things, or maybe not. We don't know. Occasionally, a charge will come up on your bill. You'd walk out.
Yeah, you
That'd
got to
be
level.
An outrage.
You got to level with the American people. There's no question about that. And it's been way way too little communication about it. I mean, like, look, we're not going to go into it now. There's an awful lot of us who have been deep down this rabbit hole and kind of understand what it is that they're trying to achieve, but it's not because you hear it from the American president. You don't. So I understand that. The Israeli aid and the Taiwan, if there's anybody that objects to that, God bless you. Like, I don't understand it. I can understand, like, the aid component to Gaza and whose hands that flows through. I get that. I got a lot of concerns about that. Basically Hamas. We've already unmasked a lot of that. So, like, why would you send tax dollars to that situation? I get it. But, like, that's the kind of thing that you legislate upon. And I think, look, this is a larger thing, and I'll close it with this. Too often in today's day and age, we're electing good politicians to legislative positions who never understand how to legislate, right? They know how to inflame passions. They know how to message. They know how to promote. Their marketing is great. They know how to become heroes amongst a segment of the electorate. They're not very good legislators. And I think the immigration thing is a perfect example of that, in that there's never going to be a situation, as long as you live, and mark my words, where you have supermajorities of Republicans across this country that are able to do exactly what they want to do when they want to do it from a legislative standpoint. It's the art of the possible.
Yeah, I mean,
how can you move this to the right, to reset the baseline, to make more progress afterwards?
Just to highlight a point there, because we're talking about border security and immigration bills. You know, there were multiple times that we were close on an immigration bill in Trump's administration. Even in those bills that are negotiated by Republican majorities, you still had things in there you didn't like.
Well, I mean, the worst one was the DACA fix.
DACA fix.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like,
what was he going to trade $25 billion for?
But nobody, right, for the wall. And it's like, sometimes that's part of it, dude, because you do need 60 votes. You need 60 votes in the Senate. Like, we're never going to pass a piece of legislation that is pristine, perfect, 100% what we want all the time. People, like, I know there's a lot of loud voices out there that will tell you that they can do it, but it's very hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Donald Trump knows that. Everybody knows that, who's tried to do it.
Yep. No, it'll continue as far as the eye. I think immigration is to the Republican Party what Social Security has been to the Democratic Party. It's something you know is a problem. It's an imminent threat to the American people.
Yeah.
And the idea that you could demagogue something, the politics are too attractive to ever actually get to a solution. I've watched it for 20 years. It's sad, but they're going to have to figure out. I think if there's one guy that can figure it out, by the way, it is Donald Trump. I think we got very, very close to him dragging along a whole bunch of reluctant participants in an idea that you have to meet somewhere in the center right to get to a solution on this. And that is right. Mm-hmm. And he showed more like, what he was talking about when he was president was far to the left from what we were talking about when I was in the Senate, and we were talking about this in 2012 and 2008, 2007, 2005. And what he was talking about was significantly further to the left, like normalization and citizenship for a bunch of illegal immigrants in exchange for full border security. It's mostly like almost a Reagan type approach to it. Mm-hmm. I don't know where he ultimately lands on all of this, but like, I do think he's the one person who has the capability of doing something that could actually fix it from a legislative standpoint. I also know that he's going to do it from an executive no matter what. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hope we don't revisit that in his next term. In the worst way, these 8.5 million people who have come in illegally under Joe Biden need to be deported.
Yep,
totally.
And Republicans have to stand firm on that, and I really hope that we can.
I don't think there should be any conversation about it.
Nope.
I really don't. And that was the thing that I think like guys like Lankford would say, like, I never entertained that conversation. And that has always been the price of admission for Democrats.
Right.
So that's a good, I mean, look, we didn't make law here, but I do think that is one thing to take away from how the issue is shifted amongst the American people. Anyway, nothing great there, but, you know, it is what it is. Listen, for the rest of our show, we've got some fun.
Yes.
We've got some games.
Entertain me.
We've got some stuff. First of all, we're going to be at the mock convention at Washington and Lee University.
This is going to be great. Have you guys seen the images of what we're headed into this weekend? I really had no idea.
It's a big deal.
I had I've heard about it, but like until I saw the pictures that they were showing us earlier today, dude, it is going to be wild.
It's awesome.
And there's also a great story about how Bill Clinton was apparently there. Usually the party out of power is the party that's sort of like gets the convention. And I was thinking maybe we should get Smug to take a saxophone into this thing.
Yeah.
Could you play
he's
the
already
sax?
got he's already got the sunglasses.
I already played the saxophone.
You do play the sax?
Yeah.
I'm sure he plays them
Wow.
all.
Dude,
Is it an alto? Is
I
it baritone?
I can play alto and baritone.
do you have
Wow.
one at your place?
No, of course not.
Wait, are you being serious? You actually
I'm being
can
dead
play-
serious. Yeah, and the worst thing about
We got to do
Wait,
this. We
the worst
have
thing
to-
about
We're just learning this now. You can
I never
actually
brought
play
this up.
saxophone?
Yeah, I can actually play it. And so I played alto, and then the worst thing is, so I didn't know at the time when the band is like looking for, okay, who wants to play baritone? I was like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. And they pick typically the people who are among the top, at it. And so I was like, I'll volunteer. I'll do it. And I didn't realize the reason no one wants to play it is because it's like the size of a human.
Yeah, it's huge.
And weighs 100 pounds. And now you're the idiot who's got to lug this to basketball games.
That's why, like when you're a little kid, they always start you off on the alto sax because it's like much smaller. Yeah.
This thing, like you have,
Are
you need a
there any
forklift when you're a
existing
kid.
pictures of you with the
Yeah.
I mean, there's
baritone?
probably there's guys.
We need to find
I'm
a-
telling you, like the thing is enormous.
We need to find
It's the
that.
size of a person.
I'd love to see this.
Yeah.
And I can belt it out with the berry, man.
I have a picture of the old man with a cello.
I was a very good cello player.
I need a picture of you.
Yeah. I mean, off the top of my head, I could still, from memorization, play like Santa Claus is Coming to Town.
Nice.
I mean, maybe we can.
I can play Christmas jazz. I'm
Dude,
good at it.
maybe we can come up with a saxophone for you to bring out on stage this weekend. You could do glowworm. You can do whatever it is you want.
I love it. Well, anyway, it's the oldest, most accurate mock convention in the United States. We're totally excited about this. Big names, and we're closing the show.
Yeah.
We're closing the show. Huge honor. Thank you to Washington and Lee for the invitation. We hope we don't humiliate you, make you regret all of your decision making. But I guess that's going to be up to us on Saturday night.
That's the risk you take.
Risk you take. All right. In other news, we're going to be dealing with the Trump court decision, a big situation. The Nevada primary, which is hilarious, and we'll figure out how to explain all of that. The RNC, a lot of question marks for the big New York Times decision. Then we got King of the Hill, and also some follow-up on our nuke discussion.
Which is exciting.
Which is exciting. I noticed, Wolf, there was absolutely no animal news in here. Are we waning on that? As no animals are doing anything crazy these days? A full week without animals, for crying out loud.
Well, we got some good stuff though.
No, we got good stuff. Just no,
I'm peeking ahead.
Okay. All right. So the big decision in the courts this week was a decision that was made from a federal appeals court that everybody's been waiting on the appeal from the Trump team that he has presidential immunity for all of these criminal prosecutions. If you read like Dr. Jonathan Turley, or if you read Andrew McCarthy, or anybody who actually knows what they're talking about, they're not like a Holiday Inn Express lawyer, like real people. They will tell you that this is like not totally unexpected. That the claims that the Trump team were making were very broad, and they anticipated this decision in one form or another. There's some question about how quickly they demanded an appeal and some sort of fishiness there. I mean, clearly the Department of Justice wants to absolutely pursue the criminal cases this year. Clearly.
Which is, I mean, that'll tell me that how politicized this issue is. That they're like, we got to get this done before November.
Yeah.
Because of justice.
Well, I mean, of course we knew that, though, going into it, which is why we've constantly said this could be a problem.
Yeah. So, but I think the biggest, so basically what they said is there is no presidential immunity for somebody who's not currently a president, certainly not for crimes that were committed after being president. And so prosecutions can go forward. The appeals court obviously says that you can go appeal this, and the Trump team has subsequently said they're going to bring this to the Supreme Court, which I believe will happen. Now, I don't think we can predict how that's going to come down one way or another, but the most important part for you as a listener to understand is that the calendar starts to get a little challenging, a little murky, because originally these were supposed to be March 4, I think, was the first date of these cases moving forward.
It's right. It was supposed to be.
They pushed those back because of this decision.
Right.
And this decision now virtually ensures that there is going to be a Supreme Court, at least some kind of an appeal heard at some point, which probably pushes it back even further. You've got to imagine, you listen to Turley and others, they say that this is a minimum of like a 3-month case no matter what. You're dealing with deep summer. Typically speaking, the Department of Justice has had a hard and fast rule about any sort of court proceedings that could impact elections. I don't think they ever could have envisioned a presidential election. I mean, we're talking about like, people in house races and things like that. We're talking about the top dog.
House people, I mean, they commit crimes all the time. Talking about house people.
I mean, back in like the day in like 06, there was like a dozen of them going on. I mean, they had like the prosecutions.
I couldn't commit the crimes.
Yeah. I had an old boss that said we're running stranglers, pedophiles, and thieves.
Jeez.
And I think all of them were convicted. But I think in this circumstance, what it means is the likelihood of obtaining a conviction on at least one of these, which is probably the Jan 6 stuff, before an election seems dubious to me.
So I have a little bit of color. I'm not an attorney. I didn't even stay at a Holiday Inn. But one of the partners on the program, Matt McDaniel, and I were discussing. He actually is an attorney, but this is not legal advice or whatever. I don't want him to get in trouble with it. But he was just musing, and from articles that he'd read, he said, if I were a betting man, it's getting more and more difficult to think that these cases are going to happen before Election Day.
Yeah.
Because of the way that this calendar is turning out, he was like, if I were a betting man, I really don't think we're going to start seeing these cases all go through before Election Day, which is fascinating to me.
I agree. It was a fait accompli at one point, and I'm just not sure, based on this and what a potential calendar might look like.
Because that changes a lot.
Yeah, but a lot of that's going to be at the discretion of the judges in these trials. And, from my conversation back in December with Judge Calabrese, they could look at it one of two ways. They could say, going forward at this time would put a thumb on the scale during a, general election, and we should postpone it till after November. But then there's also a countervailing argument that some judges say, Lady Justice wears a blindfold, and whether this is Donald Trump or some other defendant, treat them the exact same way, and the trial will go on. So, like, you just don't know. Yeah,
and everything that you said, Smug, and everything that we've said here today, it sounds an awful lot to me like legal advice from Matt McDaniel. So I think that the audience should hold him to that.
Do you think he's going to get a call from Mar-a-Lago?
Also,
he's gonna be robed up, wearing a wig by the end of this.
Also, I saw some discussion online, and I brought it up to McDaniel about how this could actually end up being a problem for a lot of the Democrats. For example, could this bring up a question of Barack Obama drone strike to a U.S. citizen?
I saw you tweeted that. I thought that was a pretty good point.
Like, deserving or not, like that's a question. And McDaniel was like, well, they could probably muddy the waters and say that's like a military thing, and you can't bring up a case against the military. That's a sovereignty thing. But I mean, the thing is, whenever you have, and Democrats historically have been incredibly short-sighted about their maneuvering. I don't need to tell you. I mean, the judicial thing is icing on the cake of examples of them being short-sighted. But this could end up being a problem for a lot of Democrats if this sticks around.
Yeah. Well, look, executive privilege is something that has to be navigated. And all of this is unprecedented, by the way. Certainly in the context of a presidential election, but there is no actual firm precedent on any of it. What there's plenty of precedent on is executive privilege as it pertains to national security. The Bush-Gitmo issue, the rendition issue, the enhanced interrogation issue, all of that was litigated very publicly in the 2000s, with Democrats arguing, of course, that he should be held liable.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And all of it was summarily dismissed and under the banner of executive privilege because it was a national security imperative. I'm not sure any of this falls into that perfect. Like, it's important not to totally pervert it, right? Because what we're talking about, if we're talking about with President Trump in these particular cases, where this could apply is actions as president post-election 2020. And they had some pretty precise wording in there that I think in some ways may indicate that they keep this directly to actions not serving as president, even though he was president. So it wasn't official actions. Now, a lawyer is going to have to straighten that out. We're going to endeavor to get you some greater clarification, far more than I can. But I do think it muddies the water enough where this is hard to see how it comes to any resolution before Election Day, unless you get a judge who is just like, we're going to do this come hell or high water.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, you thought the Jim Comey thing was rough.
Yeah.
Wait till you get a load of that. Can you imagine delivering a verdict in October of 24?
Jeez.
Whew. I mean, that's just like, you can't even make it up.
Yeah.
And you got to think about the fabric of society at some level.
That's the thing.
Some
like,
of that, you know? I mean,
and I think
just,
that's, again, going back to the way that the Democrats, in my opinion, have completely conducted a campaign of lawfare. They have stopped giving a damn about whether something tears the country apart. They are that thirsty for complete power.
No, that's right. And I don't think there's any question about that. They've done it time and time again. You know, that's not even talking about the evidence in these cases. That's just what they've done. And they've done it in the legislative arena. Appears that they're going to do that in the judicial as well. All right, so have you guys followed this Nevada thing?
Yeah.
I have. And here's the thing that's
It's amazing.
Here's the thing that stands out to me. The Trump campaign did not formally activate on this primary. In other words,
I know where this is
they
going.
They didn't have.
I know where this is going.
Yeah.
Las Avitas talkers hit the phone.
Well, let me just.
All right, let's hear your thoughts, Chris.
Let
Should
me
we
just
pipe
tell you
him
this.
in? Maybe we should just give him a call.
Let me just tell you this. They did not have a formal activation on this effort in the same way that they are in a lot of other states. Basically, President Trump made a speech. He said, "Hey, get out there and vote, participate. Don't vote, don't vote for the other people." I can't remember his exact words. The point of the matter is, if you looked at the outcome, it was just incredibly overwhelmingly supportive of any candidate other than the people on the ballot.
Yeah, so all right, so here's the
20-point difference.
Let me give you the backstory just
Okay.
so people understand.
Okay.
Nevada is a famously dysfunctional state when it comes to the running of primaries / caucuses. Forever. I mean, it's always been a complete disaster, and it's
As evidenced by the fact that they have a caucus and a primary.
Yeah. So years ago, they complained about the participation in a caucus, and so they, including the current chairman, advocated for a primary. They adopted the primary, and then President Trump didn't want that, and others didn't want that, and so then they said the primary, which is administered by the state, doesn't count, and we will not award delegates to the national convention we will only award delegates based on the caucus that we administer, the Republican Party of Nevada. Okay, so if that's not confusing enough, what it means is that the state still administered ballots for people to go vote in a Republican primary. The difference is that like almost all of the candidates, with the exception of like Nikki Haley, Mike Pence, and maybe Tim Scott, didn't even file for it. Didn't even file for it. So like you had 2 of the 3 not in the race at all on the ballot that you were voting for in Nevada. It was thought to be a presumptive Nikki Haley victory since she still is in the race. What ultimately happened, she didn't win. There was a huge mobilization of people who voted none of the above, which is essentially a vote for Donald Trump. And look, to give credit to the Haley, they didn't do that either. Like they didn't spend money in Nevada either. They're only spending money where delegates are awarded, and they're going to have a caucus which Donald Trump will dominate. I mean, there's a reason why he wanted it to be a caucus.
And that's the thing. So to begin with, I think I should preface this with I try to go to bed by 10 p.m. Why is this important? Because I guess the results happen at like 11:30. So I had no idea until I woke up and Michael Duncan is attacking me, saying I should have run as none of the above, so then I can win and be sent to Gitmo.
Yeah. So that is my plan.
Which is like an interesting take.
You formally change your name to none of the above. You declare victory in the Nevada primary. You get this wave of momentum. It carries you through to election season. You win on the first day you're impeached, and then we can finally, for the love of God, send you to Gitmo.
And so,
can we do that? Can we just change it?
Yeah. Change it.
Now there's a mass movement to send me to Gitmo. No, but like, so I wasn't even aware that was the day that the primary was happening because, again, there's no delegates that are being awarded as a result of this. And so there was a media call that Haley campaign manager Betsy Ankeny said that, quote, we aren't going to pay $55,000 to a Trump entity to participate in a process that's rigged for Trump. That's what they said about the caucus. So that's why they were not appearing on the caucus. And they said that we did not spend a dime or an ounce of energy on Nevada, referring to the primary. But at the end of the day, it's a tough look.
Here's the thing. In the caucus, by the way, we're talking about the caucus and the primary. The caucus is today. It is on February 8th. It takes place today. Trump will win the caucus just like he won the primary.
Well, he's the only candidate participating.
Was DeSantis not on the caucus?
There's nobody that's participating in the caucus other than Donald Trump.
Okay,
So my sense is
I think DeSantis was
heavily favored.
I think DeSantis was in the caucus, but given that he's no longer running,
he's not in there.
The point I was trying to make earlier about the primary where Trump's campaign is not actually activated is that his voters are so motivated to turn out and vote for him, and there is so much energy behind Donald Trump that we may not even fully realize for the 2024 cycle.
You make a good point, Chris.
That if you... I'm sorry.
I love it when
I'm sorry. I would like Republicans to win again.
Oh,
I would.
Let me break the fourth wall. I love it when you bust his balls over this.
Yeah.
It's
and
some
I
of the
love
best.
Acevita because he's incredibly effective to the point that if you can get Ashbrook on your...
I will
some of the
take
best stuff.
I will take your side though, Ashbrook. I mean, I think
it's interesting.
I think you are right that there's the fact that there's tens of thousands of people who would actually go out and vote none of the above or none of these candidates does speak to the ability of the guy to turn out primary voters. It absolutely does.
There's a hunger among Republicans to get out and vote for Donald Trump in the way that they would never be hungry enough to vote for somebody else in Nevada.
But I would note that Betsy and Nikki's campaign are correct. Like the state party is all allied with Donald Trump.
Have been for a long time.
And like publicly so.
Yeah.
Right. So I get their side of it.
But also, yes, Ashbrook, there is that energy that Trump has.
It's familiar.
That his
It's
supporters are
more
electrified. We've seen 1 million polls at this point. I can tell you first-hand witness in Iowa, his supporters are energized enough to get out there when it's -25.
Yep.
So he does have an energy.
They're like, we got one more chance. Let's make this right. You know, like this is. I feel like it's going to build.
All right. So next story is the RNC. There was a New York Times article that presupposed a situation. I'm characterizing, I'm not quoting any of this, because of course it's not in our document. It broke the news, though. That Ronna McDaniel was going to step down from the RNC, was going to be replaced by the North Carolina chair, the current Republican chairman. I think he is like the general counsel or something at the current.
Shout out North Carolina GOP.
Official role.
Yeah, he's got an official role. And then they were going to make subsequent changes when and if, and this isn't a win, Donald Trump sort of is officially recognized as the nominee of the party. This came out. It was obviously a shock to a lot of people in Washington because they didn't see that. Not a shock to us. We've been talking to a lot of people about this kind of thing. And there has been a concerted effort, obviously, to highlight what is happening at the RNC and raising questions about the management and stewardship or whatever. She's disputing all of this, saying that she's
Ron
not.
McDaniel
Yeah.
saying this. So she said that the story is not true.
She sent a letter to the 168 members of the RNC basically saying that they're currently on the road raising money and building the infrastructure necessary to win a presidential election. And I take her at her word for that. But I think let me just say at the outset, I have absolutely no hostility towards Ronna or any of the staff over there. They've been very kind to us. They have entirely sort of, been transparent with us when we have questions about things and whatnot.
And then also, I would add specifically towards winning elections, I'm a firm believer in their push to get mail-in voting understood to be viable because the Democrats are mailing in votes and winning off of that. And so the RNC's campaign to let people know that, yes, your vote will be counted, you can even check online, is key because we got to win.
Yeah. What has typically happened in years when you nominate a new nominee against an incumbent Democrat is that the nominee basically brings in their own team to the RNC and they have somebody serve as a deputy deputy chairman or whatever, but they're the ex officio, basically the chair of the place, just not ratified by the 168 members. That happens. I mean, look, it's happened every year. It happened in Romney. It happened with McCain. It happened with Bush. Like, it just happens.
And a lot of reason for that is more like the nitty-gritty and the technicals is when the presidential campaign is working in concert with the RNC, then you can start fundraising more than the presidential max out. You can go up because the RNC can then say, okay, this portion is going to this battleground state, this portion is going to this battleground state. So when you have a donor cut like a $50,000 check, and then that money's automatically allocated to state parties to do their turnout the vote operations, it's a huge help.
Seriously valuable when you understand federal campaign finance law and you understand that like you have a $3,000 individual max to a campaign, but you can go up to, I don't know what it is, like $38.40 or something like that to a party committee. And
they should index that to inflation.
Yeah, those,
by the way.
No, it is. It goes up.
That needs to go up to like $100K under Biden.
Yeah, under Biden. Under Biden, it's like you just have to hand over.
Not what it used to be.
Hand over your
Not what it
bank
used
account.
to be.
Exactly. So this is not something that's uncommon. What is uncommon is if the chair actually chooses to resign, which is what was alleged by that New York Times article. I have no idea. I really don't. I don't have any idea whether that's the case or not. And I know what's interesting to me is that there's been an awful lot of conversation amongst the right on Twitter, making Ronna basically the boogeyman for all ills within the Republican Party.
Yeah, fall guy.
And there's no question that it's been a really tough fundraising road for them. No question about that. But I also have to laugh every time I see it because it's like, man, let me introduce you to McCain-Feingold.
Oh.
Right.
Well, so explain that for people who don't know.
Well, like the two worst combination words in the English language.
So, I mean, McCain-Feingold was campaign finance reform.
Right.
And that happened all throughout the 90s, was ultimately signed in the early part of the Bush administration, was a grave mistake.
An attack on the First Amendment, straight up.
A grave mistake.
I know a guy
Pieces
who
of
fought
it.
against it.
Yeah, I do.
Me, Smug. I tried.
Yeah, okay.
Well,
Thank you, Smug,
Thanks
for
for
holding the
joining.
line.
I
all
tried.
true conservatives did fight against it, knew it was a damn terrible idea.
And I don't want to get into it to cause problems, but like McCain being a catalyst for that happening is like, come on, dude, get the hell out.
Yeah, and I've got a lot of things I can say about that, but I'm not going to do that here on the program. What ultimately happened is it took power away from party committees, and candidates, and allocated it to entirely offshore, like not offshore, but outside groups, and that was what I think when McConnell argued, McConnell v. FEC opposed to the McCain-Feingold legislation in front of the Supreme Court. His argument was basically that many pieces of this will be found to be unconstitutional going forward, and you will subsequently get a situation where outside entities on basic First Amendment rights will have more control over your political discourse than the candidates or the parties themselves.
Turns out he was right.
What ended up happening, guys?
8 years later, the Supreme Court found Citizens United, and then subsequent Colorado decision that did just that.
The birth of the super PAC, essentially.
The birth of the super PAC. But what happened is that your major dollar donors were no longer able to give major dollars to party committees or candidates. They had to give it to some entity that they had to entrusted to support those campaigns without any kind of coordination at all. And where it left the RNC, to be totally frank with you, and I worked at the RNC, and I got a lot of institutional pride about that place, like a lot of great memories. Where it left the RNC was a glorified party planner. Mm-hmm. They basically were an event planner. Like they set up
debates,
the next convention, they set up debates, they set up all of the bunting and balloons around your campaigns. What they couldn't do is actually have a real financial impact on outcomes one way or another. They stopped doing IEs, which means independent expenditures on behalf of candidates. They couldn't spend real money. What they now have gravitated towards is a quote unquote ground game. They're a keeper of Republican data, and all that's important stuff.
And can I just interject with one thing here that I think is a very important point, a little bit off topic, but before you start thinking, well, Republicans have taken advantage of McCain-Feingold in their own way, let me give you two names to tell you who's won under McCain-Feingold more than anybody else. Those names are George Soros and Hans Borg Weiss.
That's right.
Two people who are not American.
Yep. That's what this led to is when, and this is obviously a First Amendment issue of you should have the damn right in America to give your money to express your opinion. McCain-Feingold robs individuals of having that ability. So then it's the essentially creation of these outside groups, especially left-wing dark money groups who, as you've mentioned, George Soros has been just a major contributor. Hans-Jörg Wyss, who doesn't even live in this country, is not a United States citizen, yet is allowed to pipe hundreds of millions of dollars that end up going towards electing prosecutors who want to legalize crime across this country. They've been quite effective at accomplishing that. That's what McCain-Feingold did.
Soros technically got the citizenship, but he doesn't live here? Or what's the situation?
God knows. And I mean, at this point, it's like
Nobody
if you
knows.
even say if you say the wrong thing, then there's gonna be a prosecutor that he elected that's gonna knock on my door.
Right.
But that's a long way of saying that the amount of credit or blame that is put on the RNC is very misplaced in this day and age.
Yeah.
It doesn't play a significant, meaningful role in the nuts and bolts of how you elect a president of the United States or anything down ballot in terms of the infrastructure of an election, other than the data, which is very important. I think these guys have done a good job with that. And
vast improvement. Vast improvement in a short amount of time.
And they're supposed to do a ground game, which, again, you have to coordinate with state parties on all of that. And you got a real hodgepodge of who's good and who's not. If I'm trusting Arizona GOP, I might as well just set aflame everything that I've got in my bank account. But if it's, Iowa, for example, great. I feel very confident in their ability to go out and use that dollar. Anyway, whatever you think of Rana and the RNC, it has been exaggerated by a whole bunch of people who don't actually understand how the election system has worked these days. And she shouldn't be the fall guy for anything. You can have an opinion about how she's managed the thing. That's fine.
Well, I think it's like the RNC's become an easy target because in reality, I mean, fundraising is down. And I think it's down primarily for two reasons. Number one, it's the year before a presidential election year. And number two, the greatest fundraiser in Republican politics is a former president of the United States named Donald Trump, who also happens to be running again. And the RNC has to stay neutral in this contest.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And so when you have those two things in concert, like if you're a Nikki Haley or you're a Ron DeSantis supporter, like you're donating to their super PACs, you're donating to their campaigns. And if you support Donald Trump, you're donating to his super PAC or his campaign. You're not thinking about the institutional value of donating to the RNC. Right? Like you're supporting 100%. Those candidates. Yep. And so obviously it's going to be harder to raise money in that environment. And then I think there's also, to your point earlier, Holmes, I don't know. I haven't waded through all of the tweets and everything, but T-Rec from, who does all of our King of the Hill analytics, had tweeted at me at one point last week, wanted me to dig through some of these accusations of all these things. And one of the contentions is the RNC hasn't spent any money on like voter file stuff. And so I just went to the FEC website and the number one expenditure for the RNC this year was to Salesforce, which is their CRM, which has all of the supporter data of anybody who's ever given to the RNC. Yeah. They spent $2.5 million on that because that's the lifeblood of our Republican Party. Yeah. And then the fourth thing on here is $1 million transfer to GOP Data Trust, that's our voter file. That exists for the benefit of every candidate who's running as a Republican across the country. So I just think there's a lot of misinformation out there on this stuff from people who I don't know, like to get mad. I don't care if you like the RNC or not. I'm just telling you, be careful what you read on the internet and think is true.
But I also think, we talked about their fundraising woes. The fact that you have just outlined where they're putting their priorities. It's in data. It's in trying to help other people. I don't think that sort of perspective should be lost.
Right.
We're not talking about a group of people who are trying to do the wrong thing here.
No, but I mean,
look, they're taking what resources they have to do their level best to help Republicans to do better.
And I don't know.
I think that needs to be.
I don't know what I don't know.
Well, that's true.
Right? I mean, there's a whole bunch of this that I don't know about how they've expended their money.
There's
and I'm not going to vouch for
known unknowns.
I'm not going to vouch. Yeah, right. The old Donnie Rumsfeld.
Donnie Rumsfeld.
I don't know any of that. What I do know, I do know people like Richard Walters, who was a longtime chief of staff over there. I know how hard that guy works. And I know what his priorities are. So, could they have had all kinds of bad actors? Could they have had all kinds of... Sure. And I'm sure we'll find all of that out.
Yeah.
But I just think it's unfair at this level to blame them for all of the party's woes when you've had shit candidate after shit candidate in an environment that we created entirely absolutely bomb in elections. That's not their fault. If you don't know the difference between the House and the Senate and you're running for Senate, that's going to come up, and that's not the RNC's fault.
Yeah.
You got to have an answer for I don't know, what's a legislative body? Maybe just play the cartoon of how a bill becomes a law before you launch your Senate race. I mean, that might work. That might make sense.
And for the record, we're biased because, we did some of the debates or whatever. But for the record, we spent our money to do those events.
Oh yeah. Just so everybody's very clear.
If you want to go through that FEC report, it's not like an expenditure to the Ruthless Variety programs
There's
on there.
There's not a single person on this dais that has taken a single dime of RNC money.
And it burns me every day. That's my beef with RNC.
That's my beef.
Like, Wolf, you got to sell more ads. That shit's expensive.
It actually was kind of expensive.
It really was expensive. Stages don't come cheap.
No, it turns out when you want to do a full game day setup, they don't give it away.
No, they really
don't. They don't give it away. All right, so with all that, I think we covered the waterfront on all of the shitty news. Let's lighten up and play a game.
Yes.
Should we?
Let's play a game.
Well, it's Thursday, and that can mean the return of our favorite game, and that, of course, is King of the Hill. I'm bailiff today. finally I'm out of the
Oh.
I'm out of the game, and I can play peanut gallery.
Okay. Okay.
And Holmes, you're in it, right?
I am in it.
You're in it.
I'm in it, and I am going to choose somebody who has not played for a while. David Frum.
Oh, wow.
Longtime, quote unquote, conservative columnist who Trump broke along with the rest of them.
Where's he working these days?
That's a great question, John. You believe it or not, I haven't been an aficionado of his work.
Get out of here.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's working for a Hans York Vicente, whatever publication that may be.
And Ashbrook's judge, Smug, our champ. Remind me who your champ is, Smug.
It is Bill Crystal.
Fantastic.
Jeez. Oh, this is really a battle.
Yeah, this
be
is
a
Clash
good-
of the Titans.
this is gonna be
here.
a really good
and
battle.
it's like contemporary, old school, quote unquote, conservatives.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is how far they've fallen.
Holy smokes.
All right. Well, let's
Okay.
go. Let's go ringside.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please. It's time for King of the Hill. In the blue corner, fighting out of who knows where. David, where did you come from?
Excellent.
And now, in the red corner, fighting out of Pierre Omidyar's checkbook, and current champion of the world, Bill War Now, War Forever, Crystal.
Nice.
Boy, you really can't beat that.
God, it's so good. It's good every time.
I plan on being an active bailiff. I just wanted to warn the participants.
I don't think we anticipated anything else.
That is within the bailiff's right.
The judge has authorized it.
And I'm ready to roll.
Okay, go.
I got some bangers this week.
Go ahead.
Nick and Wolf, could I get Exhibit 17, please? Republicans have demagogued this issue for so long, talking about immigration. They have told so many lies, big and small, about immigration and immigrants that faced an election year with the chance to enact their policy proposals. All they can do is lie some more. This is incredible. I think the key part, it says, with the chance to enact their policy proposals. When you've got a Democrat-run Senate, when you've got a Democrat in the White House to say, hey, of all the times, this is the best opportunity Republicans have ever had to push their policy proposals. Bill Crystal may not, I mean, he is straight up a Democrat now. So he may think this is the best time to push his party's proposals. I don't think he actually understands how this works.
Thank you for that submission, bailiff. Do you have any suggestion here?
I have.
I'm going to let the bailiff have an opportunity.
No, I'm going to let the players play.
Okay, thanks.
I love
It's
it.
been a clean game so far.
There we go,
Okay.
law and order.
Okay. Counsel.
I'd respectfully retracted my discussion just to make sure that you had adequate time, bailiff. I want you to know that.
Well, it's been noted.
Your Honor, Your Honor, I'd like to pull up exhibit number 11, please. Exhibit number 11 is a quote tweet of a nonsensical argument by an anonymous, well, not Robert. This person's name is not important.
Not Roberto Kelly, the baseball player.
No, certainly not. Who also, I mean, great arm.
Great arm.
Great arm. But this is not him, I don't believe, making some sort of judgment about Republican. David Frum says, Trump Russia has many secrets, but no mysteries.
Profound.
That's a microwave take.
Right back into it. I can't believe that
We've heard this one.
I can't believe that we're in a situation where they're arguing about the modern day stuff that's happening here. And David Frum, of all people, who's a learned man, is talking about Trump Russia in earnest, like straight face,
That's stale.
that it has many secrets, but no mysteries. Of course, he's inferring that the mystery that he has solved
Yes.
is a...
In the year of our Lord 2024.
I know! That's the thing that gets me. It's like 6 years after this has been definitively disproven.
Stale.
No, I mean,
We've seen
that's
that one before.
That's the point.
Is that it's stale and old and boring?
No,
Good
that's
point.
the
I
point.
agree.
Nick, can you please pop the from tweet back up on the board? I'd like to look at it one more time. Because what occurs to me is the Crystal tweet with a twisted logic on the border is something I've heard from him over and over and over again through the years. And what we're seeing from here is an attack on Trump that is referring to a tweet about white Christian ideological alignment. It's part of like the new age of brainworms, and it's a little bit fresher from wins round one.
So we've got an activist judge who doesn't care for precedent.
Oh my
Order.
God!
Not
how
reading
dare
out
you?
the quote retweets.
Order in the court.
So we've got a rigged courtroom.
Your Honor, I object
yeah.
to this
Rigged.
castigation of this court.
Rigged
The
activist judge.
Counselor, could I advise you that your best move would be to read your next tweet?
Wow.
I'm happy to do so, Your Honor, and I'll do it respectfully.
I want for the record, bailiff is sustaining. I'm sustaining. I have no authority to do so. But
I will take acknowledgement of the bailiff's sustainment, and I will proceed with exhibit number 12. This is something you certainly have not heard of. I hadn't until today, but the Florida State House of Representatives passed a bill that would let businesses make 16.
So we're just reading
No,
quote
no, no,
retweets
no.
now.
I'm trying
That's
to
fine.
summarize it.
It's literally word for
No,
word.
no.
yeah, it's a little.
This
No,
is,
no, I
are
want-
you the president of Harvard? Because this is
hold
just
on.
plagiarism.
I will remind counsel.
I'm not going to read it.
I would remind
New
counsel to
president of Harvard.
summarize.
They made
the
people
tweet.
under 18 eligible to work 40-hour work weeks. That's what they did.
No, fair.
I had absolutely no idea that was happening, but it was happening.
And in fairness to you, it's not like it's a charged colored take. It's just literally the fact as it is.
I'm trying to just give you the facts. And so from quote tweets this, and he says, it's not about high school students. It's about teenage unauthorized migrant laborers Florida Republicans pretend they want to exclude. Meaning, I mean, hold on, just like marinate on this for a minute. What he is suggesting is that Republicans in the state of Florida are passing a bill in this time of inflation where families are trying to make ends meet, allowing for people under the age of 18 to work a full 40-hour work week, that's somehow an attack on the unauthorized, who shouldn't be here in the first place, migrant workforce and taking their jobs away in the process. Just think about the twisted fucking logic that you have to give to get that. This is a racist maneuver in From State.
Can I get an objection here? So I'd like a ruling on this. So today's February 8th, right? We have a 7-day window. That means
Yeah.
you can have a tweet from the 8th, 7th, 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd, and 2nd. And the date on that is February 1st.
What do you mean?
Well, yeah, but we're recording this the night of the 7th.
Today's February 8th.
But
We're
that's-
well within
yeah,
the
that's not how it works.
That's how it works.
Smug, out of order.
And
How dare you?
He's taking your job, dude. This is an activist bailiff on top
I think
of
he saw a nuke. He wanted to disarm it. I don't blame co-counsel for defending
Yeah.
himself.
so, anything else?
That I will leave it be.
Okay, counselor, your response.
Oh, it's a rigged activist judge. I won't even rule on that. Could I get Exhibit 15, please? It's from Bill Crystal. He says, all legislative powers shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and House of Representatives. The Constitution doesn't say all legislative powers shall be vested in the Speaker. On Ukraine, let the House work its will. Let the House vote. Who brings up bills? You think Bill Crystal might know this by now. This is yet again, I'm just a Bill on Capitol Hill. He should watch that cartoon, as Holmes brought up earlier.
Well, Frum's take on Florida is outrageous. Nobody should know better about how the House of Representatives operates than Bill Crystal. It's the most disingenuous thing he could have said about the politics of the week, and for that reason, Crystal wins round 2.
Okay.
Wow.
Profoundly disagree, but I'm going to responsibly
Out of
continue.
order. Out of order.
Let's go straight to Exhibit 16, please. It says, House Republican leadership is bluffing. They're saying the bill won't receive a vote in the House to try and undercut it in the Senate. If the Senate passes the bill with bipartisan support, there are ways to get it to the House floor. We'll have majority support. This is wild. Absolute misreading of the situation.
You think that you don't
He's
think
like,
they
listen,
were bluffing?
man, this is passing in the Senate.
I
Why
think
is
we
the
have-
House bullying the Senate?
Your Honor, I think
I
we've
mean-
established now for years that Bill Kristol is not the brightest amongst us.
I mean, it's incredible to have the take, if anyone can appreciate this squad, that like the House is calling the shots in the Senate. Like, here's how things are going, Senate. We run shit.
Pretty good. Pretty good. Okay, Counselor.
All right, Exhibit 8, please, Your Honor. So he is quote tweeting a reporter for Axios who is commenting on a statement that was issued by Senator Tillis. This was after a meeting where Republicans collectively decided that they were not going to move forward with the border provisions in the security package. And what David Frum has to say is, it's an endless rerun of that joke about Mike Pence writing an op-ed arguing in favor of hanging Mike Pence.
Jeez. That's dark.
Of course, never happened. In David Frum's interesting world, he equates anyone who sort of understands politics as it is, not as they wish it to be, as someone who is arguing in favor of their own hanging.
Yeah.
That's stale. That's boring. But
No,
essentially,
it's
this
just
comes down to the
outrageous.
question of:
I object to this.
do you agree with Bill Kristol that the Senate is the House's bitch or not?
I mean, this
And
is
I think your
outrageous.
ruling is
Look.
going to be what you believe on that. That's the question here in front of the court.
hanging of
Do
Mike
you believe
Pence.
the Senate is the House's bitch or not? Straight up.
Look,
That's the question.
I don't
before
throw a
the
lot
court.
of flags. I don't throw a lot of flags. I'm a bailiff who likes a rough game, and I like the players to work it out.
Oh, I'm glad you interjected
Yeah,
with that.
yeah, that's fair.
It's important.
That's important. It's important to
But
have
no,
a voice
but-
part
yeah,
of this program.
Yeah.
but no flag thrown.
No flag.
Okay.
I wish we had an NFL like that, man.
Yeah.
Do you have a response to this attack on?
I think that anytime you invoke Mike Pence writing an op-ed on the hanging of Mike Pence
Wow.
as a way
Holmes throwing the
As
Senate
a
under the
way-
bus yet again.
to
Yet again,
try
throwing the
to
Senate under the
argue
bus.
hypocrisy, your brainworms have escalated to a point where there's not much that matters. Perhaps in a Sherry Masheri world, but we're not dealing with Sherry here.
Well, Bill Kristol's willful misunderstanding of the process of this week in the House and the Senate got you the second round, Smug, but it's not going to get the third round.
Oh,
The third round goes to a lunatic take.
The
Comparing
activists,
this to Mike
judge,
Pence hanging
and this
Mike
kangaroo
Pence.
court are willing to throw the United States Senate under the bus. And I'm disgusted. And I'm ashamed.
he won't.
And I'm appalled.
He won't stand for it. He won't.
I'm the
Well,
only
you
person
may-
here who's fought for the Senate.
Smug, like your forefathers before you who have fought for the Senate. You may not understand it, but you lose this time.
like your forefathers before you. Oh my God!
It is a rigged decision. but the good news is there's a lot of good show ahead. I mean, I'm looking at the show sheet.
We got
the
some
variety
stuff.
segment.
We got some
It's
stuff.
bangers.
We got some stuff. All right, so you've got to see this. My favorite part by far is the nuclear take.
Yeah.
So you recall last
So
episode.
literally the nuclear take.
Yeah. So the last episode we were talking about how somebody basically found a nuke in an estate sale, and when the guy died, it was just residing in this guy's garage. It was just hanging out. Well, it turns out there's more to the story than that. There's a lot more to the story than that, because there's many, many more pieces of this. And if I can find the piece of paper, I'm definitely going to.
It's a big doc for today's episode.
Golly, there's just a lot of paper, fellas. There's just a lot of paper.
You want to put up the image of the
Yeah, can we
the
put up
Jeep?
the image? There it is.
Yeah.
Wait,
There it is.
that is a nuclear weapon in the back of that Jeep?
Well, so somebody had written in.
Yeah. Steve Reich.
Yeah, the Steve Reich.
Wonderful minion to bring this information to the team.
Totally. The Genie missile was deployed in 1957. That's the one that we were talking about on Tuesday.
That was found in a garage sale.
It was found in a garage. Remember we talked about how hilarious it was? There was air to air.
It was air to air. I mean, you mean business.
Like we used to be a country where we would nuke airplanes.
Oh, not just air to air, unguided.
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 It's the true king of spray and pray.
So this guy knows what he's
But
talking about.
1957. So Robert Oppenheimer himself screwed in this war, right? Is that what's going on
Bro,
here?
I really wish that was in the movie.
He's putting the Phillips screwdriver to it. So the Genie missile was deployed in 1957 through the 1980s to defend against Soviet bombers. The Air Force was expected fleets of bombers like World War II. The Genie was intended to take out the whole fleet.
I mean, this is great color from Steve
So
Reich.
we deployed crazy array of nukes in the 1950s, including the one you're looking at now if you're a YouTube subscriber, which includes a nuclear missile mounted on a Jeep.
Which is so I've seen people with Rubicons and like was it CJ7s and such. This is the hardest Jeep in the game.
Yeah.
I have never seen a more impressive Jeep. Like I know a lot of folks got their Jeeps like lifted, ready to go off road, but this will get rid of the road. This will get rid of a 5-mile radius. Like who cares about what kind of like hills and approaches you're facing when you can just flatten it all?
Don't you really want to know like how far that missile can
I do. I really do. And I mean,
Like, is it a suicide mission?
Well,
Like-
does this thing have nitrous? Is it like fire and then it's just like Fast and the Furious? Like
It's-
hit the nos, bro. We out.
but it's called the Genie, and it grants only one wish:
It's your last wish. Make it count.
the annihilation of your enemies. And I can't imagine a better wish granted than that.
I mean, I can't. What do you got?
That is so sick.
Wolf's got something.
It only goes 2.5 miles.
No!
Wow.
No!
That's not far enough.
So Wolf tells us off camera that sucker only goes 2.5 miles.
You got to be wearing one of those like dentist vests when
Yeah.
you're
Dude,
getting X-rays. It's like you're driving the thing with the dentist vest, being like, "I'm only 2 miles away."
Imagine the
I'm not
full
trying to get cancer.
Newt Rockney speech that it takes to get somebody to get in that Jeep. Right?
You'd have to.
Don't worry, fellas. Buckle up.
You'd have to do it at max speed and fire that thing in the opposite direction and make
yeah.
sure you got out of the blast radius before it lands.
There's no
That's
chance
not
you could
gonna
get out of the
work.
blast radius.
Well, I mean, if you could just, get
Haven't you
three
seen-
or 5 miles, right? Like,
Have you ever seen the sum of all fears?
I have seen it. I don't think this
2.5
is as
miles
big.
isn't far enough.
Well, I don't think this is that big. I don't think it's going to have a 5-mile blast radius.
It's like
it's a nuclear weapon.
Yeah,
How small can it be?
I don't know.
You know, they got to have like a Minuteman on this thing.
Do
right?
they
We're talking
have
about city killers.
Wolf? Like you're kind of an expert on these sort of things. Like
You drive a Jeep
Is
like
there
this?
such a thing as a small nuclear weapon that, like, I don't know, 2 miles away, you don't have anything to worry about?
I would imagine this was designed to not kill our own people, but in the 50s, who knows?
Said I would imagine
Yeah.
it was designed
We used to be
not
focused
to kill
on
our own
W's in
people.
this country by
Well,
any
it's-
means necessary.
It says here that the Air 2 Genie had a 300-meter lethal blast radius.
I mean,
300
That's not
meters
that
is not
large.
enough.
It's not very large.
yeah, but the fallout.
Oh,
Yeah, that's the thing is like the radiation and such.
They're
You're
not worried.
absolutely
You
wearing.
just drive away from that.
It's the dentist vest, dude. It's the dentist vest.
Look at that Jeep, by the way.
I mean, absolutely.
Just stuff.
That is
absolute.
still that is the sickest Jeep I've seen in my
Beauty.
life, dude.
I think Lee's got one of these, by the way.
Don't say that. The feds are listening.
Yeah,
no,
the feds
not
Lee,
definitely-
I'll protect you in my
not the-
bunker.
Not the nuclear weapon, just the Jeep.
Also, can you get this
Oh,
thing
yes.
at one
No,
of
it's
those like?
also a weapon against our enemies, so Mike Lee might take note of that.
Can you
care for that.
Can you pick one of these up at a surplus sale? Because that is so hard. You can't even ride shotgun in this thing. The
Yeah.
nuke rides shotgun. For the folks who are only listening,
The
you
new
gotta
ride
go to the
shotgun.
YouTube.
You're right.
It's a one-man show.
It is
isn't
the sickest thing I've seen.
It's a
dude.
one-man show. Can you imagine getting those orders? Hey, buddy.
And also,
Get in the Jeep.
just driving it around is like the hardest shit ever, dude. Like, my God, I got a nuke riding shotgun.
And to launch the Genie, it's not a trigger. You just rub the side of it.
How'd you go, Fred?
So in other news, it turns out Trump has basically re-endorsed Bud Light.
Oh, yeah, I
Oh,
saw
I
that.
saw that.
Yep.
I did see
You
that.
saw that?
What's everyone's take on that?
Well, I mean, look, we were on Megyn Kelly a few weeks ago where she was absolutely apoplectic about the idea that like Dana White and Kid Rock and others had done that. I'm curious to hear what she thinks about this. I mean, I think the reality is it's like everything that we said at that time in response to Megyn during that show remains true, which is like boycotts, particularly for massive international conglomerates, only get you so far because time sort of heals all wounds. There's new generations that aren't either as offended or don't remember it. The only way to overcome that kind of thing is to provide alternatives.
I think that's exactly right. The President Trump is going to do what he is going to do, but I think it's incumbent upon everybody listening to this show to shop local, to shop at non-woke organizations, buy beer that is from a distillery that is local, and
Distillery.
and
Brewery,
look
amigo.
and
But
look.
I recommend
I'm
distillery.
sorry. I mean
distillery.
brewery. I'm sorry. I said the wrong word. But
Unless it's Dragon's Milk, which is probably from a distillery.
Okay. my point is anybody listening should buy local, buy non-woke, and
That's
look
right.
at companies like Public Square. If you haven't seen Public Square, you can check out their website. They have a network
Yeah,
of
they do.
non-woke local companies who you can find and you can buy from, who are in your communities. And I think that's the lesson here is. that you need to buy them.
There's no international conglomerate, certainly as big as Anheuser-Busch, that is not going to figure out a way to dig themselves out of a hole one way or another. They figured it out, and I'll let you do the homework to figure out how you think they did it, but they did. And so the question is not whether you just like continuously boycott everything that you're outraged over, or whether you find local alternatives, and whether you do, I mean, there are places like, like Public Square and others that do provide a map that you can literally click on to see what's in your area if you want to buy anything from a T-shirt to like diapers.
Yeah.
And like look at that stuff
The thing-
because if it matters to you, if you want to
There's a way to do it that is not difficult.
Yeah, if you want to vote with your dollars, it's not enough to be like, well, I'm gonna ban Bud Light, because ultimately, like that times, this hasn't been that long ago, by the way.
It's about
Times
to
will
hit the
change.
it's about to hit the 1 year anniversary in a few weeks or
Yeah, it's
something.
just like such a short amount of time.
I mean, I think the thing that grinds my gears, as things often do, me,
Oh yeah,
is they just never apologized.
Yep.
They
No,
never
no.
apologized. And so in that way, they're sort of left off the hook by this. That's why I don't like it.
Yep.
But-
That's my
Good
take.
point.
Is God forgives, I don't. I'm never gonna drink Bud Light. They had their chance. They screwed it up. They didn't even apologize. It's a wrap. The second,
but you're also a guy who drinks Kentucky bourbon, which we greatly
that's the thing.
appreciate.
Is like what I do drink. I don't really drink beer. I only mostly drink bourbon. And it's like this distillery is like 7 employees, right? It's like
Yeah.
they got a still and they got a bottling machine, and that's what I drink. They don't have an opinion on shit, and they get the job done.
Yeah. All right. So last thing on the Super Bowl, fellas. Obviously, this is coming up. The next time we will speak to you, we will have a new world champion in the National Football League. It turns out that sports betting and swifties converge on the Super Bowl, according to Axios. This year's Super Bowl will likely smash records for sports betting, thanks in part to Taylor Swift, as they say. I'm not sure that's true, but it's definitely part of a headline you'd like to work into an algorithm.
Right.
That is exactly
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
I mean, like, this is. I don't want to interject. I apologize, but I'd heard this story a few years ago where, well, now it's probably like 4 or 5 years ago, where major publications, Washington Post, New York Times, all of them ran tests of how a story performs when it has the name Donald Trump in the headline as opposed to not. So it could be like, here's a T-shirt that Donald Trump wouldn't want you wearing, as opposed to here's a T-shirt you should go buy.
Yeah.
And anytime you include the words Donald Trump, they get a 30% bump.
Well, I remember in the mid Trump presidency, like the 2018 range, we were running a bunch of Senate races that had absolutely nothing to do with the president at the time. Like they were just like the candidate and like the things that he was working on, and they were doing. And they would throw Trump in the headline.
Yeah.
And then you'd read it, and then you'd read the entire, and it never said anything.
Nothing.
Like literally not one thing about Donald Trump in the entire story, and you're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what a bunch of.
And so,
they,
like,
they
that's-
utilize like very powerful analytic tools to show them. That's CrowdTangle is one of them.
Yeah.
But a lot of these publishers look at that data and they see what's trending, and then they shape their headline to it.
And that's what now Taylor Swift is essentially
Swift
like,
and Trump.
come on, let's be honest,
Yeah.
man. Like, the Swifties are not showing up to bet. The Swifties are not on DraftKings.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that.
Well, they're expected to wager $23 billion. Both of those figures would far exceed last year's record-setting Super Bowl action. There's a good chance that every Super Bowl for the next 10 years or so would be the most bet Super Bowl thanks to underlying growth in regulated sports betting across the U.S., gambling analyst Chris Grove told the AP, which the statement in and of itself basically undermines the lead of the story about Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
What
the
a
thing.
perfect example. He's like, no, it's because we're deregulating the gambling market. More people have access, more people are interested, and it's expanding over time. And they're like, nope, it's Taylor Swift.
Okay, so this is interesting. this is really interesting, and I want to follow up on this. So this is from the story in Axios. It says, some sports books are even offering Taylor-specific bets. That type of wager isn't legal in the U.S., womp, womp. But international betting sites are running wild. Users of FanDuel Canada can bet on whether Kelsey will propose to Swift at the game. 70% of bettors say yes. I would take the other side. This is not
Yes.
legal advice. It's not
Oh,
investment
yeah,
advice.
you got to take the down
Bro,
on
if
that.
I could, come on.
Yeah.
Come
You're
on.
saying he's not going to do it.
No, I'm taking the other side of that all day in size.
All day.
Well, I would say what I'm doing for the Super Bowl is I will be cheering for the 49ers, but I'm going to be betting the Chiefs as an emotional hedge
That's a good
because
way
I
to do
don't
it.
want the Chiefs to win, but I mean, my head tells me they're going to win.
You're saying Chiefs are going to win.
Well, at least I'll be happy regardless of what
I
happens.
don't have any particular animosity one way or another with these guys. Like I nobody's ever gotten rich betting against Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs or
Right.
the Super Bowl, and so I'm probably not going to do that.
Yeah.
So you're going to say Chiefs win.
I think I'll take a look at the line, what it is before. I mean, I think they're 2, something like that.
It was 2 last time I checked there.
Money line's sort of attractive in many ways. I think I'll
This is
probably
not financial advice.
see if I can do a little
not betting advice.
parlay action. See
Yeah.
if I can work in like a Kelsey receptions thing. They put it way low in the AFC Championship. I won good money on that.
What's your prediction here, Smug?
My prediction is I'm going to be watching this at Jesse Hunt's house, and his dogs are going to go ham.
So you don't have.
And I
you're
swear
not
to
taking
him,
a winner. You're not
today
taking a winner.
is I will make a solemn vow on the show. If like last year, one of his poodles locks the door, I'm kicking out a window, and I'm going up and I'm strangling the dog.
Oh my God.
God is my witness.
You're
I
gonna
will do
murder
that
his
shit.
pet?
If he locks us in the basement, there will be at least one of them poodles hanging.
You're gonna murder a pet.
And I saw him, I will, hopefully on Tuesday it's not Smug's not here because animal control has him locked up. But if that dog does it again like last year, it's got to go. And I made it clear last year. So again, I'm a man of my word. I said, I said, bro, if that is not fixed, I'm gonna kill that fucking dog.
It'd be really funny. It'd be really funny.
That's not fixed. Meaning your dog.
It'd be really funny if DC, a town that doesn't put criminals in prison,
They would.
animal control puts him in prison.
It'll be a Soros animal control.
Well, good luck getting out of your apartment without being carjacked, and after that, I like your chances. Fellas, I think we did it. A big week of the variety program. Thanks for everybody for listening. As again, I say like we've just been smashing records here lately, and much appreciate not only that, but your visits to our store, visits to the subscribers to the YouTube and everything else. Fellas, I think we did it.
I think so. Absolute banger of an episode. Gentlemen, again, as Holmes said, if you have not yet, subscribe on YouTube so you can see as well as hear. So, until next time, minions, keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs. We'll see you on Tuesday. Stay ruthless.